Shortly, we'll bring you our first conversation that focuses on the compressed natural gas development, and then from the angle of, well, one, investment, and the second is, if you like, availability of refuel stations where those who now have their vehicles converted and those who are going to ultimately do that conversion can access with some ease of some, well, measure of ease, refueling for their different vehicles. Government says in the next 18 months, the plan is to add 150 more CNG refuel centers across the country. Hopefully that also happens. Now, the authorities, I mean, the head of the initiative, the PC NGI, now says to Nigerians that at least $491 million has been attracted by way of investment into the CNG initiative. But there's a long road to cover because the target for the authority, one of their part of their mandate is to ensure that they hit a $1 billion mark by the end of 2025. That's a tall order, which we're going to discuss in detail shortly. But there was this sad story this morning, basically across social media platforms, of a young lady who was said to have died in her room, well, not in her sleep. The story says that a scaffold in the compound that was supposed to hold a water tank collapsed for reasons we are not aware of, and then it kills her right inside her room. I've seen that happen before, well, in this country, yes. But what it tells you is that we need to do more work with regards to due diligence, right? With regards to how we place premium on lives, whether those lives are your children, your spouses, your parents, your siblings, generally your relatives, or even your neighbors or your tenants. Very important, because in the last, say, 12 or so years, I've taken out time to look at houses where the first time I look at is what is the quality of the fitting. Look at the electrical fitting, for example. Look at even plumbing. You know, some of them, you move into the house in a matter of few weeks, I mean very few weeks, things start breaking off. You're wondering, is it like I'm the one who's careless? Or is it like these are substandard materials that we use? And when you check, 99% of those cases, it's not the occupant of the house that was careless. It was just a matter of substandard materials being used. But again, these are issues we need to continue to talk about. In the meantime, we understand that our guest has joined us this morning to discuss investment-specific issues regarding the compressed natural gas initiative that has been on in this country for a while now. Our guest joins us live via Zoom from Lagos this morning, Dr. Wisdom Enang, Senior Energy Consultant. I want to say a big thank you to you for making our time to join us on short notice this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, sir.
Great.
Good morning.
This will be the first time we're having this conversation. Incidentally, my colleague, Queen Adaba, will also throw a few questions your way. But let's hit the road running quickly. First of all, the last time we talked about this, we just in passing talked about investment, but that has become ever more critical now. The coordinator of the PCNGI says, look, so far we've done about $491 million in terms of investment. However, we understand that the ultimate objective is to hit a $1 billion mark by the end of 2025. Talk to us about whether or not this is a tall order.
No, not at all. I think it's not a tall order, and I think there's every reason to believe that we can hit it. In fact, we can hit more than that. The reason is, if you look at the gas, we've got an opportunity to develop it because we've got a lot of potential uses for gas. I'm careful not to use the word gas market because gas market will allude to the fact that you have provided the enablers to translate a market need to an actual market. And those enablers are not there. We're trying to stimulate those enablers. But be that as it may, I think that we've come a long way, and we do have the population. So that's one thing. We do also have a lot of initiatives being earmarked by the federal government for funding support. And I think those funding support is important to know from the CBN. Those funding supports are not meant to be the sole funding vehicle for, CNG investments. What they're meant to do is to allow people access funds to perhaps achieve what I call proof of concept on whatever small scale, and then that would then create the right investment proposition that should attract more investments for scalability. So it is important to understand that even the regulatory provisions as well have been done to engender gas investment. So I personally believe that we are on the pathway, but it's quite slow. Again, for example, how many of those refilling stations or plants have been dotted around the states outside Lagos and Abuja? That's one of the statistics we need to look at. What can we do? What areas of synergy and opportunities for development subsist for us to harness between the federal and state government in dishing out some of these initiatives quicker enough? Because if you look at states like Akwa Ibom, for example, where I'm from, you will not get the same speed you get with Lagos or Abuja, but definitely there's a large market that or potential market that has a need for the gas, for CNG gas, especially with the cost of PMS. So I think it is important for us to look at how we can scale faster. But to answer your question, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. We nearly have all the enablers for that. We just have to work harder to get this dished out. There are a lot of people waiting for it to come, and we need these CNG initiatives for so many reasons. I mean, states now are looking at running their power stations. So a lot of that is going to be run on gas, on CNG. So the faster we can roll some of these initiatives out, the better. One question on my mind is which is going to come first, the chicken or the egg? So which is going to come first? Is it the CNG, for example, the vehicular users that are going to stimulate the investors that will produce the gas, or is it the gas producers that would now incentivize people to go and convert their vehicles? And it's a bit of both. Sometimes you have to get the government stimulating that growth, getting those stations at the various levels of the state producing gas, and then people will see the need to build or retrofit their existing petrol stations to have CNG, and people can start converting the vehicles they have to CNG. So we have a long way to go, but it is possible.
Before Queen Johnson, you mentioned in the past now the issue of whether or not we've been able to dot, cities across this country with CNG refill points. The government says one of its targets is to do 150 of such refill points in the next 18 months. How feasible is that?
It is feasible. Well, it depends on the model they want to run. And I'll give you a very simple model that is feasible. So assume that you have let's for the sake of this explanation, let me define two terms: a daughter station and a mother station. A daughter station simply warehouses the gas in large quantities or gets access to produce gas, and then is able to dish it out. It doesn't serve any vehicle, just it's able to send it out for it to be distributed across the various refilling points, which we'll call the daughter station. And the daughter station is where you can then bring a vehicle and then get served. Now, one simple model the government could build is to go build daughter stations to serve various vehicles. And that could be done maybe about 3 per state or thereabout. And then build a central mother station with a very large capacity. Why am I advocating for a large capacity? It means that even if that state isn't producing gas, like having a CNG plant, assume a case of maybe Akwa Ibom, and then assume a case of building a mother station there, one mother station and 3 daughter stations that can save vehicles across the 3 senatorial districts. Now, what you could do is you could have a schedule depending on what you calculate the utility rates to be like. You can have a schedule where vehicles coming with compressed natural gas from, say, Port Harcourt and then they fill up the mother station regularly, and the mother station would then be dispensing to the daughter stations. Now, remember that model, as I said, is quicker, and the reason it's quicker is because you do not have to go and start developing the gas fields and having gas pipelines and then having a gas CNG plant. That would take longer. So they could literally achieve this using this sort of model where we use what we call virtual pipelines, the CNG trucks, and begin to transport things from where we already have an existing CNG plants down to areas where there's a need, there's a market, but there is no CNG plant. But if we're talking about developing fields, putting pipelines which are the more permanent solutions, that's going to take a while. But I think we can start from this other model that I have, sort of talked about, and then build up our capacity to where we can now have operational pipelines and operational fields exclusively serving the gas needs and the gas markets.
Your contribution so far. So while we think that the initiative, the CNG initiative, is commendable, particularly with the fact that the cost of having to fill your tank is way lesser compared to fueling your car, many people or drivers have decried, the expenses, how expensive it is to convert their vehicles from fuel to CNG. What do you think we can do, what the government can do to maybe help, better help people convert from fuel to CNG? Or speed up that process?
I think the government are already trying to do as much as they can by, they can only do more of that, subsidizing the kits and making them more affordable. The government could run, as I like to say, the government could, get a scheme in place that allows for zero, interest rates. People could, access funding. And the way this funding works in other climes is that you go to your bank, you sign up that you want to get on one of the green energy initiatives. It's a green energy funding, and then your bank doesn't give you any money. They literally give the money to a third party person that will come in and retrofit this thing for you, and then you bring your vehicle, they retrofit it for you, and there's a period, I think about 2 to 3 years for you to pay it up. Is deducted from the money that comes as source, for which they would have done their assessment to ensure that you can actually pay that off. And then this money is deducted in amounts that are so small that you may not feel it as badly as you would if you were to buy it outrightly. And then that conversion is done at a 0% interest rate, and then you can pay off. And I think that's a very good starting point, because if we can start this, then we can target perhaps the salary earners that are getting some sort of income and the business people that are getting some sort of income. The loan market in Nigeria has matured. People access all sorts of loans at all sorts of interest rates. So I think the government can put in 0% interest rate funding to support people for conversion. That's on one part. The other part is that we can also help employers incentivize the whole idea of conversion by, offering some tax credit to companies that have certain quotas of people that they have been able to support in their company, either through some sort of, counterpart funding, where the person brings some amount, like 50%, and the company matches it to support them with the conversion. So there are all sorts of initiatives that different countries have put together. The other thing would be looking to quickly through the NCDMB, where we have the local content arm of the oil and gas industry, for us to quickly domesticate the manufacturing and certification of these kits. It's really important, because sometimes you ask people to convert and they're asking you, let's even look at the basic thing like, where do I test my cylinder, because I do not want an explosion on my hands. So how do I handle that bit? There's also the conversation around, making sure that how do I get, the kits that are not imported, because some of them, those importations make those kits quite expensive. So people are asking, are they Nigerian variants? And even when you sold some variants that are supposedly the cheaper ones, they are not safe enough, and you don't know this. So can we possibly have the manufacturing in country? Those are all things that will add together to make it much cheaper for the average Nigerian.
Well, we hope that something the government happen to take up this initiative and maybe bring some sort of relief one way or the other. We've had long queues, similar to what we have in fuel stations since the start of CNG. The initiative. So yesterday, particularly yesterday, we experienced long queues along major parts of Abuja where we have CNG stations. What can we do? Why do we still have, that challenge of having to queue for gas as we queue for fuel as well? And, how do we ensure that, we don't get to have as much issue around getting gas like we do for fuel?
Yeah, you're right. There is clearly a situation where the need outweighs the supply, and that's exactly what's going on. There's a comparative case, right, that has been created, which is that we do need gas because it's way cheaper to manage, from an operational cost standpoint, compared to PMS. So it is that has been well established. One way we can, do to be able to relieve the queues that you've seen is for us to have a lot of it dotted around. Obviously, there is a high demand for it. And as we grow, we're going to see a lot more of that as people begin to convert. So I think the government needs to start expanding, but also because it's a queue, it also calls for private people to come in, because typically this is what happened in the US. The government started out, the market got stimulated, people observed that there were so many queues always asking for CNG, and around the environment they began to build CNG stations across to decongest those areas. And as those ones got clogged up, because more people saw that there were more supply of CNG stations across and began to convert, as this one got clogged up, other people came in and opened up more refueling stations to decongest, and that was the way, so much more like a ripple effect. That was the way that a lot of the markets did open up for CNG. So essentially, I think that's even an opportunity for private sectors, for the government alike, to look at the indices required for them to make investment decisions to expand the footprint of the various CNG refilling stations.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Wisdom Enang, for your contribution to the topic of, driving critical investment to scale as regards to, the CNG initiative. We'll definitely love to have you again. Maybe a business point where, we get to have more time to, look at different angles and discuss, further. We hope that you grant us that request.
Absolutely. Just call on me anytime and I'll be there. Thank you very much. It's a big pleasure to speaking to you and your colleague. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day ahead. Well, that's how much we can take out the conversation. He raised,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, brilliant points there raised about not just investment, but also availability, access, and, off the camera, I mean, you and I talked about those who need to get off the ground with regards to conversion, cost implication for them. Not everybody can pay right from their pockets and all of that. What are the options we have? And he just mentioned one that is, very feasible, where you approach a bank, for instance. The bank doesn't give you cash outright. Instead, they approach, again, a third-party entity that does the conversion for you, and you can spread the payment for as long as 3 years, and you almost don't feel the pinch, because it's just like a bit of your money that will be taken by way of repayments every other month. And that's fair. But in all, the point being made is that the CNG initiative is starting out on a very good footing, regardless of the teething problems that we may have noticed here and there. All right, let's take a quick break, everyone. We have much more to talk about in the course of the program. Do stay with us.